June 10, 1943, near the Dutch coast. The late morning sun flashes off the silver-grey sea as a pair of Mosquito bombers slice across the coastline at barely 150 feet. Their twin Merlin engines roar at a pitch that turns heads on every airfield they pass, higher, sharper, almost unnaturally powerful. Behind them, the first bursts of German flak erupt in black clouds, trailing upward like jagged pillars. A Mosquito jinks hard to the left, its wooden wings flexing as it threads through the explosions with impossible agility. Just minutes earlier, a radar station near IJmuiden had sounded the alarm, unidentified aircraft approaching at a speed the operators didn't believe at first. Too fast. Much too fast for normal IAF bombers. Luftwaffe fighters respond at once, Mi-109s banking sharply from their patrol lines, climbing to intercept. But as they close in, the German pilots witness something that makes no sense. The Mosquitoes pull away. Not gradually, decisively. Their acceleration looks almost unnatural, the gap widening with every second. One German pilot radios in disbelief. "These aircraft, they're outrunning us." What no one in the air knows yet is that a single ground mechanic, bending IAF regulations to the breaking point, has unlocked a level of speed the Mosquito was never officially meant to reach. In the summer of 1943, the Mosquito stood as one of the most unconventional aircraft in the war, a bomber built almost entirely of wood, designed at a time when the world believed combat aircraft must be heavy, armored, and forged from metal. When Geoffrey de Havilland first proposed it in 1939, many senior officers dismissed it as impractical, even foolish. A wooden machine, without defensive guns, outrunning enemy fighters purely with speed? The idea sounded like a gamble Britain could not afford. But the war changed everything. By 1941, the RAF had watched too many slow, gun-laden bombers burn in German searchlights or fall under swarms of night fighters. Weight was killing them. Speed had become survival. And the Mosquito, light, aerodynamic, and remarkably stable, promised exactly that. Its heart was the Rolls-Royce Merlin, the engine that powered Spitfires and Hurricanes during the Battle of Britain. But the Mosquito needed something more. It needed not just a powerful engine, but a forgiving one, capable of long-range, high-speed flight at dangerous power settings the RAF had never authorized. In official documents, engine boost pressure limits were strictly enforced. Mechanics were warned that exceeding these settings risked detonation, overheating, cracked pistons, or catastrophic engine seizure. In practice, that meant the Mosquito's true potential stayed hidden. On paper, the aircraft could reach impressive speeds. In reality, regulations kept it comfortably inside safe zones designed for training, not combat desperation. By early 1943, Luftwaffe interception methods had evolved. German radar chains along the Dutch and Belgian coasts had become faster, more synchronized. Long-range fighters like the Ju-88C and Bf-110G were now optimized for pursuit, fitted with heavier armament and increasingly aggressive climbing tactics. The Mosquito was still fast, but its margin of safety was shrinking each month. Commanders in the RAF's 2nd Tactical Air Force began noticing the problem first. Mission reports described near intercepts where German fighters were only seconds behind. Some crews reported hearing cannon fire passing just under their wings during low-level escapes. A few were hit on the run home. The Mosquito's legendary untouchable status was no longer guaranteed. On the ground, this created tension. Pilots demanded more power. Flight chiefs demanded reliability. Headquarters demanded strict adherence to regulations. And in the middle of all of them were the mechanics, men responsible for turning battered aircraft around in hours, sometimes minutes, with limited tools, limited components, and endless pressure. These mechanics understood the Merlin engine intimately. They knew its weaknesses, its rhythms, its limits, and occasionally, how far those limits could be stretched before something gave way. Unofficially, workarounds existed in nearly every squadron. Small tricks to coax an extra few minutes of cooling, a slightly cleaner fuel-air mix, a fractionally quicker throttle response. Nothing written. Nothing approved. but absolutely essential. Still, all of these adjustments were modest. Safe. Avoiding controversy. What happened in mid-1943 was different. The RAF had begun receiving limited supplies of 150-octane fuel, originally intended for high-performance fighter operations. This fuel allowed higher boost without pre-ignition, if the engine could handle it. Fighter Command quickly embraced it for Spitfires over southern England. Bomber units, however, were discouraged from using it due to concerns over maintenance strain and the risk of unsanctioned engine stress. But for Mosquito mechanics stationed near the North Sea, watching Luftwaffe fighters grow faster each month, these rules felt dangerously out of touch with reality. They needed to get ahead of the enemy again. Not in theory. In the sky. And so, small groups of ground crews, unofficially, quietly, began to study how much more boost the Merlin 21, 23, and 25 engines could tolerate during short bursts. They consulted old Rolls-Royce manuals, damaged components, overheated cylinders from scrap yards, and first-hand accounts from fighter squadrons. A picture began to form. There was untapped power locked behind paperwork. Yet the risk was immense. Mechanics caught altering boost governors or mixture controls without authorization could face demotion, reassignment, or worse. But the threat facing their crews was greater still. When a Mosquito failed to outrun pursuit, the crew didn't face reprimand. They faced the North Sea, night fighters, or flak. Mechanics lived with those consequences. In one squadron, whose records would later hint at an unnamed innovative corporal fitter, a decision was made that would ultimately redefine the Mosquito's legend. A simple mechanical adjustment, small enough to hide under a cowl panel, powerful enough to change the aircraft's entire performance envelope. By mid-1943, Mosquito squadrons were increasingly relied upon for daring raids over occupied Europe. Their missions were precise, fast, and often conducted at extremely low altitudes to avoid radar detection. Each sortie carried immense risk. The Germans had improved night fighter tactics, combining radar guidance with coordinated interception vectors that forced RAF crews into split-second decisions. A single delay or misjudged turn could be fatal. The Luftwaffe strategy was evolving. Radar stations along the Dutch coast fed data to controllers who vectored Me-109s, Ju-88s, and Bf-110s toward incoming Mosquitoes. German pilots trained extensively to anticipate evasive maneuvers, climb at the correct angles, and intercept before the bomber reached target altitude. They assumed the Mosquito's speed advantage could be mitigated through superior planning, numerical superiority, or aggressive interception at key choke points. Yet the aircraft itself, despite its remarkable wooden construction and twin Merlins, had limits. RAF regulations dictated boost pressure and engine timing carefully. Flying too fast for too long risked engine seizure, forced landings, or catastrophic failure over the North Sea. Pilots understood the risk. They pushed their throttle cautiously, relying on conservative settings that sometimes left them vulnerable to enemy fighters. In practice, these official limits slowed the Mosquito's ability to outrun German intercepts. Mechanics stationed in forward bases understood the gap between operational needs and bureaucratic caution. Engines could tolerate higher boost for short bursts, provided maintenance crews carefully monitored cylinder head temperatures, spark timing, and fuel mixture. Yet, altering boost settings without approval was considered illegal. EF regulations were strict, and written warnings accompanied nearly every new Merlin installation. Officially, no pilot could exceed the limit. Unofficially, every mechanic and fitter knew where the real envelope lay. It was against this backdrop that one unnamed mechanic, working quietly in a forward maintenance shed, began experimenting. His goal was not fame nor recognition, but survival of the pilots, of the aircraft, and of the mission itself. Drawing on personal experience, he adjusted the throttle stop, modified the fuel mixture for 150-octane bursts, and calibrated the supercharger to permit controlled overboost. The work was subtle, almost invisible, but it promised a dramatic effect, a Mosquito capable of outrunning the fastest German interceptors at both low and medium altitudes. The significance of this move cannot be overstated. By increasing boost safely beyond official limits, the mechanic unlocked a performance edge that German controllers had not anticipated. Even if the Luftwaffe had full radar coverage, pilots arriving to intercept would suddenly find themselves outclassed, unable to match the acceleration and top speed of a Mosquito already climbing, already maneuvering, already gone. Meanwhile, the psychological environment amplified the stakes. IF crews had long trusted the Mosquito's innate speed but had grown wary of near misses. German fighters, increasingly aggressive and better coordinated, were pressing the advantage. Every mission risked both aircraft and life. The mechanic's modification, though clandestine, offered a tangible solution, a way to tilt the odds back toward the pilot. At the same time, logistical pressures compounded the urgency. Maintenance crews were overworked, fuel supplies fluctuated, and aircraft turnaround times were critical. Every day that a Mosquito returned intact allowed planners to continue raids that disrupted German supply lines, delayed troop movements, and struck high-value targets. The speed advantage would not only protect crews, it would magnify operational success across an entire theater. By the time the first aircraft equipped with the illegal tweak rolled out onto the airfield, the stage was set for a dramatic demonstration. German radar operators would see a blip approaching faster than ever before, fighters would climb and strain to intercept, and the Mosquito's new capability would astonish both sides. One small, clandestine modification promised to redefine air combat in Northern Europe, turning an already formidable aircraft into a nearly untouchable predator in the sky. The tension between rules and necessity, regulation and innovation, had created a singular moment. The mechanic's daring choice bridged the gap between theory and practice, allowing the Mosquito to achieve performance that had existed only on paper. And as the first sortie with this modification prepared to take off, pilots would soon witness a reality that even German commanders could not believe. At the heart of the Mosquito's transformation was a mechanic who understood engines not just as machines, but as instruments of survival. Working in cramped, dimly lit maintenance sheds, these men faced impossible demands, rapid turnarounds, extreme temperatures, and the ever-present knowledge that a miscalculation could cost lives. The anonymous mechanic who performed the illegal boost tweak did so quietly, aware that regulations prohibited such adjustments, but also aware that strict adherence to rules could leave pilots vulnerable to the Luftwaffe. His work was meticulous. Every supercharger setting, fuel mixture adjustment, and throttle calibration required precision. A slight error could induce engine knock or overheating, potentially destroying the aircraft mid-flight. Yet, confidence in his skills, honed over countless engine rebuilds and emergency repairs, allowed him to take calculated risks. He was supported by a network of fellow fitters, who understood both the danger and necessity of pushing the Merlin beyond its official limits. The human courage and ingenuity in these small workshops became as vital to the Mosquito's performance as the engines themselves. This human element extended to pilots. Crews trusted that their mechanics had squeezed every ounce of safety and power from their aircraft. That trust allowed pilots to push throttle levers further than regulations officially allowed, creating a synergy between human skill on the ground and human daring in the air. It was a quiet, unseen partnership, but one that would redefine what the Mosquito could achieve. The Mosquito's twin Merlin engines were marvels of engineering, but they were not invincible. Standard RAF limits restricted boost pressure to prevent detonation, cracked pistons, and catastrophic failure. Early Merlins, when pushed beyond these parameters for extended periods, risked immediate mechanical catastrophe. Yet the engines were capable of more than official doctrine allowed, particularly for short bursts. The illegal tweak was deceptively simple. By slightly altering the throttle stop and adjusting the supercharger gearing, the mechanic enabled the engines to produce extra horsepower during critical phases of flight, especially in climbs and low-level dashes. Combined with 150-octane fuel, the aircraft could operate at a higher boost for several minutes, enough to outrun interceptors, evade radar, and complete high-risk missions safely. Technically, this modification required intimate knowledge of the Merlin's tolerances. Overboosting indiscriminately could destroy cylinder heads, induce pre-ignition, or warp crankshafts. But carefully calibrated, the adjustment remained within the engine's short-term capacity, maximizing output without compromising long-term reliability. It was a precise, almost surgical enhancement, a hidden edge that German engineers had no knowledge of. Speed was not a luxury for Mosquito pilots, it was survival. In daylight raids over northern Europe, the difference between outrunning a Me-109 or Bf-110 and being hit was measured in seconds and hundreds of meters. German fighters could reach high top speeds, but acceleration and low-altitude performance remained inferior to a Mosquito equipped with the overboost tweak. Tactically, the modification allowed Mosquito crews to approach targets quickly, execute precision bombing runs, and escape before enemy fighters could organize interception. This advantage was amplified when flying in pairs or small formations. The lead aircraft could break through defenses, while trailing aircraft followed the same path, maintaining a speed edge that kept them untouchable. For planners, this meant missions could be executed with unprecedented reliability, reducing losses and increasing operational impact. Every sortie became a tactical demonstration of human-machine synergy. The mechanic's hidden intervention transformed the Mosquito from a fast bomber into an almost untouchable predator, capable of dictating the terms of engagement with the enemy. From the German perspective, the Mosquito was already an enigmatic threat, a fast, low-flying bomber capable of striking targets deep within occupied Europe. But after reports of aircraft moving faster than previously recorded, Luftwaffe controllers were confronted with a new problem. Radar operators detected blips accelerating beyond known capabilities. Interceptors climbing to engage found the targets vanishing, leaving confusion on the ground and frustration in the cockpit. German pilots assumed they were facing experimental aircraft or perhaps faulty radar readings. Every failed interception fed a growing sense of disbelief. Their heavy fighters could not match the Mosquito's speed in operational conditions. Reports circulated among the Luftwaffe that aircraft escaped without effort, highlighting a performance gap that seemed inexplicable. The human and technical ingenuity of a single mechanic had, unknowingly, created an almost psychological advantage. German pilots began doubting their equipment and strategy even before engaging in combat. The Mosquito's transformation was as much about leadership as it was about engineering. Squadron commanders and flight leaders had to make rapid decisions in an environment where a single mistake could be fatal. They trusted both their pilots and their ground crews implicitly, knowing that human skill on the ground could create advantages in the air. This trust extended to mechanics who occasionally bent the rules for operational necessity. Leaders understood that strict adherence to regulations sometimes clashed with the reality of combat. By tacitly allowing controlled tweaks to engine performance, commanders demonstrated a pragmatic approach to warfare. Risk was carefully balanced against survival and mission success. This culture of flexible leadership enabled the mechanics modifications to be fully utilized, turning innovation into operational advantage. Leadership also played a role in mission planning. Pilots were briefed on the enhanced capabilities of their aircraft without revealing the clandestine source of the advantage. Flight formations, intercept evasion tactics, and altitude choices were adjusted to leverage the Mosquito's superior speed, allowing commanders to exploit this hidden edge fully against German forces. Every modification carried inherent risk. Overboosting a Merlin engine, even for short bursts, could result in pre-ignition, blown pistons, or warped crankshafts. Long-term durability was compromised, and a miscalculation could destroy an aircraft mid-mission. The mechanic's genius lay in precise calibration. By monitoring supercharger stages, cylinder temperatures, and fuel mixture, he extracted extra power while maintaining short-term reliability. The margin for error was narrow. A single misadjustment could endanger the crew and invalidate the mission. This risk, however, was mitigated by extensive hands-on knowledge of engine behavior under stress. Mechanics used test runs, historical data, and intuition honed through repeated maintenance to ensure the engines could withstand the illegal power output. The result was a high-performance aircraft whose enhanced speed was both sustainable for critical moments and deadly in execution, a combination the Germans could not anticipate. The boost tweak was considered illegal precisely because it violated official IAF regulations. Written warnings, manuals, and internal policy prohibited exceeding engine limits. Mechanics who attempted such modifications risked reprimand, demotion, or even court-martial if discovered. Yet the moral calculus was different. The lives of pilots and the success of missions were at stake. For many mechanics, bending the rules was not reckless, it was ethical. Flying with conservative boost settings exposed crews to enemy fighters they could otherwise outrun. The choice to modify engines became a moral imperative: risk the rules, or risk losing aircraft and men. This tension between regulation and necessity defined the RAF's approach to innovation in the field. It demonstrated that sometimes, adherence to rules must yield to survival and ingenuity, a reality that would shape Mosquito operations for the remainder of the war. The psychological impact of the modified Mosquito was profound for both IAF crews and German pilots. Pilots, knowing their aircraft could accelerate past almost any interceptor, gained confidence in low-altitude runs and daylight operations. This confidence translated into sharper maneuvers, reduced hesitation, and higher mission success rates. For the Germans, the effect was the opposite. Radar operators and fighter pilots faced an invisible advantage they could neither predict nor counter effectively. Reports described frustration, disbelief, and confusion. Pilots chasing Mosquitoes found themselves outrun repeatedly, undermining confidence in their aircraft and in Luftwaffe interception strategies. The psychological edge reinforced the physical one. German hesitation allowed Mosquitoes to escape more easily, while pilot confidence ensured that IAF crews could exploit every tactical advantage. One mechanic's decision, therefore, created a cascading effect: enhanced performance, improved morale, and enemy doubt, all interlinked to reshape operational outcomes. By combining leadership insight, controlled engineering risk, moral courage, and psychological advantage, the Mosquito became more than a fast bomber. It became a nearly untouchable force in Northern Europe. June 14, 1943, coastal Belgium, morning. The Mosquito, freshly outfitted with the illegal engine tweak, rolled out onto the runway. Its wooden fuselage gleamed under a pale sun, and the twin Merlin engines roared in near-perfect harmony. For the crew, the moment carried a mix of anticipation and tension. They knew this flight would test a secret they could not reveal, a modification designed to bend the limits of physics and regulations alike. Takeoff was smooth but immediately revealing. As the aircraft lifted, acceleration exceeded expectations. The crew felt the subtle vibration of overboosted engines, but the calibration held. In minutes, they were climbing to operational altitude, skimming over the North Sea, eyes scanning for enemy activity. Radar stations on the Belgian coast picked up the approaching blip and sounded the alarm. Luftwaffe controllers vectored Mi-109s and Ju-88s into intercept positions. The Germans assumed they had a chance. After all, Mosquitoes were fast, but no British aircraft could surpass 380 to 390 miles per hour in practical conditions at low to medium altitude. When the first fighters arrived, they found their target already accelerating away. The Mosquito responded instantly to throttle inputs, a surge of power unmatched in any previous encounter. German pilots strained to keep pace, pushing engines to red lines, yet the Mosquito maintained a widening gap. The air was tense, charged with speed and anticipation. Flak bursts erupted below, spitting black smoke, yet the Mosquito sliced through each cloud with precision. The pilot banked sharply, using a combination of low-altitude contouring and sudden acceleration to avoid enemy fire. The overboost tweak allowed rapid bursts of power that German pilots could not match, leaving them forced into reactive maneuvers rather than offensive control. On board, the crew could almost hear the invisible line they had crossed. This was no longer a marginal advantage, it was a transformation. Every corner, every throttle adjustment, every calculated climb exploited the mechanic's clandestine modification. Acceleration curves previously theoretical now dictated survival in real time. Observers on the ground and in enemy aircraft noticed anomalies immediately. Controllers radioed, bewildered, target is accelerating too quickly, impossible airspeed. Pilots chasing from the Mi-109s reported frustration, often too late to adjust. In several cases, they overshot their altitude or misjudged closure rates entirely, forced into defensive dives to avoid collision or loss of control. The Mosquito's wooden frame, light and aerodynamically efficient, responded effortlessly to bursts of overboost. Pilots noted the sensation of the engines pushing beyond expected performance, a vibration tempered by precise calibration. The aircraft seemed to dance above the waves, threading the line between danger and control. Minutes stretched as the Mosquito executed evasive maneuvers while maintaining mission heading. German fighters tried predictable interception patterns, climbing or turning to meet their target, but every attempt was countered by speed alone. The aircraft's increased thrust made tactical maneuvers, sharp climbs, quick reversals, and rapid accelerations effortless, a demonstration of the synergy between man, machine, and hidden innovation. By mid-morning, the first phase of engagement had reached its critical point. German squadrons were disorganized, communications frayed, and attempts to close the gap failing. The Mosquito had not just survived, it had dictated the engagement. Every aspect of the chase highlighted the advantages of the mechanics modification, acceleration, sustained speed, and pilot confidence combined to produce a performance the Luftwaffe could not anticipate. This first mission set the tone for subsequent operations. Reports filed later noted that German crews described the Mosquito as outrunning anything in the sky, a statement that would echo in Luftwaffe intelligence circles for months. On the RAF side, pilots returned exhilarated, aware of the new edge they carried in the cockpit but sworn to secrecy regarding the source. The tactical brilliance, technological risk, and human ingenuity converged in these minutes over Belgium. The mechanic's quiet decision in the hangar had shifted the balance in operational air combat. Speed, once a theoretical advantage, had become absolute, and the Luftwaffe's carefully calculated intercept strategies had failed to account for this new reality. As the Mosquito completed its first operational sortie with the tweak, the story was clear. The aircraft was no longer just a bomber, it was a force capable of outpacing any German fighter it encountered. The stage was set for the decisive moment of the engagement, where the full implications of this hidden innovation would become impossible for the enemy to ignore. June 14, 1943, mid-morning, over the North Sea. The Mosquito's first operational sortie with the illegal engine tweak had proven the concept, but the test was far from over. As the aircraft approached the Dutch coastline, German radar stations scrambled additional fighters, including Ju-88s and Bf-110s. Controllers coordinated multiple vectors, expecting the Mosquito to follow predictable patterns. What they did not anticipate was acceleration beyond measured limits. From the cockpit, the pilot felt the engines hum under the short-term overboost. The aircraft surged forward, leaving German fighters straining to close the distance. Despite full throttle on Mi-109s, Ju-88s, and Bf-110s, the Mosquito widened the gap with every maneuver. Low-level flight across the rolling waves and sudden climbs revealed a new reality. The Mosquito had become untouchable, at least in this engagement. German pilots attempted conventional interception tactics. One Mi-109 climbed aggressively, hoping to cut off the Mosquito's path, while a Ju-88 positioned itself slightly above and behind. Both aircraft accelerated to full engine power, yet the Mosquito responded instantly with bursts of speed, tightening turns, and slight banking adjustments. Within seconds, the distance between pursuers and target increased beyond the visual range of most observers. Radio chatter from the Luftwaffe reflected confusion. Controllers repeated, almost incredulously, "Target is beyond interception range, impossible speed, maintain visual." Pilots reported strange airspeed readings, aircraft disappearing despite close pursuit, and misjudged closure rates. The Mosquito's performance exceeded any prior data the Germans had collected. As the aircraft crossed the coast, flak bursts erupted from fortified positions. Normally, this would have forced evasive maneuvers that slowed the bomber, exposing it to enemy fighters. Instead, the Mosquito weaved through the fire with precision, accelerating during climbs and leveling out just beyond shell range. The modification enabled engine output sufficient to maintain speed without compromising control, an advantage German gunners could not counter. The psychological impact on German pilots was immediate. One Bf 110 pilot, later recorded in post-mission reports, described the Mosquito as moving like a phantom, accelerating at impossible rates. Confusion and frustration were evident across the intercept formations. Pilots, conditioned to predict RAF bomber speeds, found their assumptions invalid. Tactical coordination broke down as each fighter struggled individually to match the Mosquito's pace. Meanwhile, the Mosquito crew maintained calm, relying on training, formation discipline, and their newfound speed advantage. The pilot executed a series of evasive climbs and rolling turns, knowing the aircraft could handle overboost for short bursts. Each maneuver widened the gap further, ensuring that enemy aircraft were forced to abandon pursuit or risk structural strain on their own engines. In several moments, German fighters came within visual range, taillights glowing, cannon muzzles flickering, but the Mosquito had already accelerated beyond effective engagement distance. The wooden fuselage, aerodynamic lines, and reinforced Merlin engines combined to produce a blend of speed and stability unmatched in contemporary air combat. The mission continued across northern Belgium, with the Mosquito weaving through flak zones, low-level river runs, and coastal defenses. German attempts at interception failed consistently, reinforcing the aircraft's reputation. By the time the Mosquito reached its target area, it had already set a new operational benchmark, a light bomber capable of outrunning any German fighter it might encounter, even in concentrated defensive conditions. Upon return to base, the crew reported every detail meticulously, careful to describe the speed advantage without revealing the clandestine modification. Squadron intelligence officers noted the effect on Luftwaffe tactics. Reports indicated growing confusion, delayed interceptions, and multiple failed engagements attributed to aircraft exceeding expected performance. The implications were immediate. The Mosquito was no longer merely a fast bomber, it had become a game changer. German pilots would have to rethink engagement strategies, assume greater risk in every interception, and acknowledge a performance gap previously thought impossible. RAF planners understood the strategic edge this conferred. Mission success rates would rise, losses would decrease, and the aircraft itself had acquired an almost psychological dominance over the enemy. By mid-afternoon, the Mosquito had returned to base unscathed, engines humming quietly after their overboost exertion. For the first time, the crew and ground staff understood the full significance. A single, carefully executed tweak by a mechanic had transformed operational air combat in Northern Europe. The combination of human skill, technical ingenuity, and tactical execution had created an aircraft capable of defining engagements entirely on its own terms. The German command would soon review radar and pilot reports in disbelief, unable to reconcile what had occurred with known performance data. Luftwaffe doctrine would have to adapt, but the Mosquito's advantage had already been proven: fast, agile, and untouchable. The first operational proof of the engine modification had concluded, leaving both sides changed. The RAF with a newfound edge, the Luftwaffe with an impossible problem. The immediate consequences of the Mosquito's first operational sortie with the illegal engine tweak were profound. For the RAF, the mission validated a bold gamble. Controlled overboost, applied quietly by a skilled mechanic, had transformed a fast bomber into an almost untouchable aircraft. Crews returned exhilarated, reporting encounters where German fighters had been unable to close the distance despite maximum effort. The psychological impact was immediate. Pilots felt not only safer but empowered, able to execute low-level daylight strikes with renewed confidence. Mission reports and intelligence summaries emphasized the Mosquito's newfound reliability. Prior concerns over Luftwaffe interceptors had restrained operational planning. Now, commanders could schedule longer-range strikes, deeper penetrations, and more audacious missions. Every successful sortie reinforced morale on the ground and in the air. The secret modification, while officially illegal, became an unspoken advantage across multiple squadrons. German forces, by contrast, were left in disbelief. Radar operators noted blips moving faster than any previous aircraft, and controllers reported repeated failures to vector interceptors effectively. Pilots chasing the Mosquito over coastal Belgium and Holland described it as impossible to catch and outrunning everything in the sky. Luftwaffe intelligence struggled to reconcile observed performance with known specifications of Merlin-powered aircraft, sowing confusion and hesitation. Strategically, the tweak's impact extended beyond a single sortie. By allowing Mosquitoes to outrun interceptors, the RAF could conduct more reliable precision bombing campaigns against key German infrastructure and supply lines. Resources reached their targets with reduced attrition, enemy movements were disrupted more effectively, and Allied air operations gained a psychological edge over German defenses. On the human level, the mechanic's ingenuity became a silent legend among squadrons. Pilots did not know his identity, but they understood the aircraft now carried an advantage that no training, formation, or tactic alone could provide. This invisible partnership between ground crew and aircrew exemplified a wartime truth. Innovation often arises in small, unsung acts, where risk is measured not in fame but in survival. The RAF also faced operational considerations. While short-term overboost was safe under careful monitoring, excessive or repeated use could stress the Merlin engines. Maintenance crews adapted procedures, adding closer inspection routines after flights, monitoring cylinder heads, spark plugs, and oil temperature. The balance between maximizing performance and preserving aircraft longevity became a central concern, but one that could be managed thanks to skilled technicians. The mission's success resonated beyond operational data. Luftwaffe pilots, frustrated by repeated failures, began second-guessing standard intercept tactics. Confidence in their numerical advantage eroded when faced with Mosquitoes that seemed to vanish from radar screens. Reports circulated noting unusually high speeds, generating uncertainty in planning and a heightened sense of caution in engagements over Northern Europe. By the end of the first series of missions, the RAF had demonstrated a clear tactical advantage. Not only could Mosquitoes reach targets more reliably, but crews could now dictate engagement terms with the enemy. German commanders, forced to adjust their tactics, often arrived too late to intercept, leaving Mosquitoes free to complete missions unscathed. The combination of technical innovation, tactical acumen, and human courage had produced a decisive edge. The story of one mechanic's risk, small, clandestine, but expertly executed, had become operational reality. This single act reshaped engagement outcomes, protected crews, and forced the Luftwaffe to confront a capability they could neither anticipate nor counter with existing doctrine. As reports from both sides accumulated, it became clear that the Mosquito's performance had not only immediate operational consequences but long-term strategic effects. RAF commanders began to plan broader utilization of the overboost modification, confident it could be replicated safely, while the Luftwaffe began a slow, uneasy reassessment of aircraft capabilities in northern skies. In the weeks following the first operational use of their illegal boost tweak, the Mosquito's performance began to reshape the operational landscape over northern Europe. Squadron leaders quietly adopted the modification for additional aircraft, recognizing that the speed advantage dramatically increased mission success and reduced losses. Pilots were briefed on the aircraft's new capabilities without revealing the clandestine origin of the enhancement, maintaining operational secrecy while exploiting the advantage fully. RAF commanders, initially cautious, began documenting the modification's effects. Flight data, pilot testimonies, and mission debriefs confirmed the Mosquito could outperform even the most experienced German fighter pilots in acceleration and top speed at low and medium altitudes. In practical terms, this meant fewer aircraft lost to flak or fighter interception and greater reliability in executing precision raids. The aircraft, once already remarkable, had entered a new class of performance, untouchable by conventional Luftwaffe tactics. The Luftwaffe took notice. German intelligence and radar operators reported consistent failures to intercept Mosquitoes, noting that the aircraft's speed exceeded known specifications of Merlin-powered machines. German pilots expressed disbelief, recording in post-mission reports that targets accelerated beyond comprehension or vanished from visual range without effort. These accounts signaled a profound psychological shift. German confidence in air superiority over occupied territories began to erode, replaced by caution and hesitation. At the same time, the RAF faced engineering considerations. Continuous use of overboost required careful monitoring of Merlin engines, cylinders, and fuel consumption. Ground crews implemented more rigorous post-flight inspections and maintenance schedules, ensuring that the short-term strain imposed by the modification did not compromise aircraft longevity. With proper oversight, the risk remained manageable, allowing squadrons to expand the use of enhanced Mosquitoes across multiple bases and theaters of operation. Strategically, the modification's impact was considerable. RAF planners could schedule deeper penetration raids with lower attrition rates. Mosquitoes could now strike high-value targets, such as industrial facilities, transport hubs, and radar stations, with a reduced risk of interception. This operational reliability increased pressure on German supply lines and contributed to broader Allied efforts to weaken the Axis war effort. The success of the engine tweak also reinforced morale on both sides. RAF crews flew with renewed confidence, knowing their aircraft could dictate engagements rather than react to enemy movements. Conversely, German forces encountered repeated failures, leading to doubt in both tactics and equipment performance. Reports of Mosquitoes outrunning everything in the sky circulated among Luftwaffe command, creating uncertainty that influenced subsequent deployment decisions and interception strategies. By late 1943, IF policy shifted to formally acknowledge higher boost limits under controlled conditions. The earlier illegal practice became standardized, supported by technical guidance and specialized training for mechanics. Fuel and engine management protocols were adapted to allow safe use of overboost during critical phases of flight. What had begun as a covert act of ingenuity transformed into an officially sanctioned enhancement, ensuring the Mosquito retained its edge over German fighters. The broader lesson was clear: a single, precise innovation, initiated quietly by a mechanic working under pressure, could alter operational outcomes, force strategic re-evaluation, and change the course of engagements over an entire theater. The Mosquito, once remarkable for its design alone, now carried the combined force of human creativity, technical skill, and tactical exploitation. German commanders, confronted with repeated failures, began re-evaluating their approach to interception. Fighter allocation, altitude strategies, and radar coordination required adjustment to account for a capability they had no means to predict. The Mosquito's speed advantage disrupted assumptions, demonstrating how innovation in engineering and field improvisation could have outsized effects on enemy operations. By the end of the year, the Mosquito had solidified its reputation, an aircraft that could strike with precision, evade almost any interceptor, and redefine operational expectations. The modest, clandestine modification had become a cornerstone of tactical superiority, exemplifying how courage, ingenuity, and technical skill, when applied judiciously, could alter the dynamics of warfare. As the operational consequences became evident, the stage was set for reflection. The story of one mechanic's risk, executed in a hangar far from the front line, had reshaped air combat in Northern Europe. The Mosquito's legendary speed, once limited on paper, now dictated engagements and forced a re-evaluation of both Allied and Axis strategies. The story of the Mosquito's clandestine boost modification is more than a tale of engineering ingenuity, it is a testament to human initiative under pressure. A single mechanic, working quietly in a forward maintenance shed, made a decision that would ripple across the skies of Northern Europe. By bending regulations with skill and precision, he unlocked a capability that transformed operational air combat, saving lives and redefining what was possible in wartime aviation. The Mosquito's speed advantage illustrates the delicate balance between rules and necessity. Regulations existed to preserve life, maintain reliability, and standardize operations. Yet in the crucible of combat, adherence to protocol alone was insufficient. Survival required judgment, courage, and a willingness to take calculated risks. The mechanic's decision exemplified this principle, bridging the gap between doctrine and reality, and demonstrating that innovation often arises at the intersection of necessity and creativity. Strategically, the consequences were profound. The Luftwaffe, confronted with aircraft moving faster than their doctrines predicted, faced uncertainty and frustration. Interception tactics faltered, confidence eroded, and the Mosquito gained a psychological edge as well as a physical one. Allied planners leveraged this advantage, executing precision raids with unprecedented reliability and redefining the operational parameters of light bombers in the European theater. But beyond tactics and strategy, the story resonates on a human level. It reminds us that war is shaped not only by generals and planes but by the countless individuals whose ingenuity, courage, and quiet resolve influence outcomes. The Mosquito's success was a collective achievement: pilots who trusted their aircraft, mechanics who understood their engines, and commanders who balanced risk with necessity. Each played a role in turning a wooden bomber into an icon of speed and survivability. In the end, the Mosquito became more than an aircraft. It symbolized the extraordinary potential unlocked when skill, daring, and innovation converge. One mechanic's illegal engine tweak did not merely outrun German fighters, it reshaped the narrative of aerial warfare, proving that ingenuity, even in small, unseen acts, can change the course of history. The North Sea would remember that day, not as a simple engagement, but as the moment a wooden bomber outran the war itself.